What's up, you guys, and welcome to 2021. I'm so happy to see you, and Happy New Year. Am I late? I'm a little late. It's February, but that doesn't mean the sentiment is not still there. I'm happy to see you guys, and I'm happy that you're joining me yet again. Last year, I left you guys with a battle of the 35mm rangefinders, and today you're going to get my opinion on which camera took the bout. The cameras that I will be addressing today are the Olympus 35RC and the Canon Canonet QL17 G3 and the Yashica Electro 35 GSN. I don't have that one here with me because I borrowed it from my friend. Nonetheless, I will still be talking about it and giving it its due justice. All right, y'all, let's jump into it. First things first, if you haven't watched any of these battles and seen how these cameras perform, please check out the videos. Links will be in the description, and I might pop one up here, somewhere, because you want to have an idea of how each camera performed in similar settings. So go check those out. Now, before we get too into it, I would like to give a disclaimer. The following thoughts are my opinions on these two cameras. They are not the gospel, but if it were, it'd look a little something like this. That's right, it'd be a good old-fashioned Southern gospel. If you disagree with something I say, that's cool. Just comment down below and let me know your thoughts on whatever topic it is you disagree with. I'm open, you know, new year, new perspectives. I'm here to communicate with you guys. So jump in the comments, let's have a discussion. So in my assessment of these three cameras, I'll be focusing on 5 main points: ease of use, viewfinder, ergonomics, the lens, and price. Those are the areas that I'll be focusing on while giving my opinions on these cameras. All right, so let's jump into ease of use. First things first, let's just get this out of the way. All these cameras are extremely easy to use and straightforward. There's that. They're also beautifully designed and have pretty minimalist looks to them, which make the shooting experience that much easier. There are, however, slight differences. The Yashica Electro 35 GSN is a fully automatic range-finding camera, and it is battery dependent. Now, since it is a fully automatic exposure camera, that means that the only control the shooter really has is in choosing the f-stop, focusing, and figuring out your composition. That's it. If you're anything like me and you've been working with phone cameras for a while, you absolutely hate this. You kind of hate the lack of control. And at times during the battle, I definitely felt this way. I couldn't really give the cameras the same setting while shooting in these battles because, like I said, all I could choose for the Yashica was the aperture. So I did my best to give the Canon camera the same f-stop at least, but as far as what shutter speed was selected in the Electro, who knows? However, if you're a beginner, then the Yashica is perfect for you, and not having to worry about things like your shutter speed and aperture will be a weight off your shoulders. The Olympus 35RC is a fully mechanical camera that does take a battery for the internal light meter. So there is that. You also have the option of shooting this camera in aperture priority if you choose to do so as well. But if you don't have a battery for this camera, it's perfectly fine because you can continue to shoot this camera manually. The Canon Canonet is very similar to the Olympus 35RC in this regard because it also gives you the option to shoot in aperture priority mode or to shoot manually as well. If you do not have a battery for the Canon, same situation, you can still shoot the camera manually. So the Olympus and the Canon are not battery dependent, while the Yashica definitely is, because if you don't have a battery for the Yashica, you can't shoot it. The good thing about utilizing all 3 of these cameras in aperture priority mode is that they don't allow you to take photos that are over or underexposed. The Yashica has 2 arrows inside that indicate if you are over or underexposed. The Canon Canonet will not let you fire if your image is overexposed or underexposed. Same with the Olympus 35RC. So these cameras all have fantastic aperture priority modes if you choose to use them. Well, if you choose to use them in one of these 2 cameras. You don't have any choices with that Yashica 35 GSN. You gotta suck it up and utilize it how they tell you to. I may have a problem with authority. Let's talk about these viewfinders. In my opinion, the viewfinders definitely set these cameras apart. The Yashica has a big, sometimes bright viewfinder. Upon seeing it, you get excited. You're like, wow, look at all this space inside here. This is gonna be great. It's so easy to use. Not my experience. I often found the patch inside of the Yashica to be hard to read. In the really bright situations while I was at Manhattan Beach, it would feel like the viewfinder would be so bright that I couldn't read the patch properly inside. And When I was shooting in situations where I was in the shade, I also had difficulty because then I really couldn't see what was going on. I have spoken to other people about having these focusing issues using the Yashica, and they suggested that I put a finger. How? Sway? It was suggested to use a finger to kind of block a little bit of the light in the little square there, but I didn't really do that. Instead, what I did to make sure that my photos were in focus was to just have a higher f-stop to make sure that I would at least get something in focus that I was aiming for. And that worked out pretty well for me, as you can see by the photos that I produced both in the review of the Yashica video and in the battles. Now, the Canonet viewfinder wasn't as big as the Yashica's, but it is solid. I find this viewfinder very easy to read and very easy to use. I don't often have problems focusing while using the viewfinder. The patch typically lines things up perfectly for me, and I don't have too many complaints. The only time I had problems focusing the Canonet was when I did the video shooting portraits with the Canon Canonet video. If you haven't checked that out, here's a link to that video, or over here. One of those. And the problem with that was that in low light, shaded situations, I found it hard to focus on my subject's eye. And in those situations, what I ended up doing was focusing on my model's jawline or an ear if it happened to be out. Same thing, I would kind of up the f-stop as much as I could to make sure that my focus would be close enough. And that was my solution / workaround to focusing the Canonet in those types of situations. During the battles, though, I found myself reaching for the Canonet first when I came across scenes because it was the easiest viewfinder to see and use. So I would often grab it when I came across a scene or an action scene because I knew I'd have an easier time of pulling focus and getting it together quicker. Then I would reach for the second camera and shoot it. Here are some sample photos of when I definitely grabbed the Canonet first. These are mostly action photos where things were happening or people were moving. Once again, that pretty much happened because the viewfinder was extremely clear. Now, the Olympus 35 RC is a tiny giant, and it's so cute. Look how small it is. But with its compact size comes a small viewfinder. Yeah, very small, very small. It's not the easiest to kind of see. I find myself kind of squinting a lot when I use it. The patch inside is very small, and it makes sense because the viewfinder is pretty small. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a while to just make sure that I have my images lined up properly, and I'm ensuring that what I'm trying to take a photo of is in fact in focus. I also found that the viewfinder isn't as bright as the Yashica or the Canonet, but once you have your photo in focus, then you're pretty much guaranteed a very sharp image from this little powerful giant. Go, little giant, go. Let's talk ergonomics. That's a fun word. Ergonomics. Ergonomics. Let me stop. When it comes to the build of these cameras, I find that the Yashica 35 GS10 in comparison to the other two has it's basically like a big brick, you know? It's square, it's bulky, I have small hands, so I feel like I have like a lot of finger space when I'm holding it, you know, like this, which is kind of weird. The weight isn't too off-putting considering I lug around this Pentax 6.7 all the time, but it's definitely the heaviest of the group, weighing roughly 26 ounces or 728.4 grams for my people outside the States. Now, the Olympus 35 RC is a pocket-sized wonder. One of my favorite things to do is to put it in my pocket and just walk around. For it to be so small, it produces such quality images that it's just a pleasure to have. It of course weighs the least out of the three cameras, coming in at 14.7 ounces or 415 grams. Now, if you're someone who has big hands, you may find this camera a bit tricky to use. Everything is tiny and close together. Even the focusing ring, it doesn't have a lever, so you have to get your fingers in there in the middle between the camera body and where the focusing ring is and try to make your adjustments that way. So if you have big hands, I can definitely see this camera being kind of tricky for you to use or difficult at times. If this is the case for you, I recommend you upgrading to her big sister, the Olympus 35 SP, as she is a bit bigger and closer to the size of the Canonet here. So I find the Canonet to be the perfect size for me. This kind of feels like Three Little Bears.
You think it's too big?
The Olympus is too small.
The Canonet is just right. But yeah, I find the ergonomics of the Canonet to be really great. It fits very comfortably in the hand. It doesn't feel weird. It's not too heavy. It's not too light. I often walk around with it slung across my body without any issues. I don't get tired, don't get weighed down. There's a focusing lever on the focusing ring, which makes pulling focus really easy, as there is a short focus throw with the Canonet, which I love so much. In my opinion, this is the most attractive camera in the group. There's rarely a time when I walk around with this camera that someone doesn't stop me and try to guess what kind of camera this is, or want to take a closer look, or tell me how they might have owned this camera themselves. The quick loading feature of the Canonet is perhaps one of my favorite things about this camera. I put the film in, super easy, close it up, advance it maybe 2 times, and then I end up having 2 extra frames. It's super easy, it's super fast to use when you're on the streets, and you get 2 extra frames most of the time if you don't advance it all the way to 0, which I don't, because I like having 2 extra frames. All right, let's talk about these lenses. All of these cameras come with fast, sharp lenses. However, the focal lengths do vary amongst the cameras. The Yashica Electro 35 GSN comes with a 45mm f1.7 lens. The highest f-stop is f16. The lowest f-stop, of course, is 1.7. And the closest focusing distance is 2.6 feet. The equivalent is 0.8 meters. The fastest shutter speed is 1/500th of a second, while the slowest shutter speed is 1/30th of a second. The focusing throw isn't bad, although it's not the shortest of the group. There's also like a finger nub on the focusing ring, which makes it easier to pull your focus while utilizing this camera. I feel like I got some good images while utilizing this camera, especially in the battle. Compared to the Canonet, you can see that there wasn't much of a drop off, if any, while utilizing this camera in that battle. I was pleasantly surprised with how sharp the images came out, and the images came out sharper than I thought they would initially. Like I said in previous videos, I didn't have a lot of expectations while utilizing this camera, and it pleasantly surprised me because of this fact. The Canon Canonet QL17 G3, getting so fast saying that, y'all, has a 40mm f1.7 lens. The highest f-stop on this camera is f16. Of course, the lowest f-stop is 1.7. The fastest shutter speed on the camera is 500th of a second, while the slowest is 1/4 of a second. The closest focusing distance is 2.6 feet, the equivalent being 0.79 meters. The focus throw on this camera is quick, and there's also a notch for your fingers to help you focus quickly. Love it. This camera is often referred to as the poor man's Leica. Disrespectful, of course, as I feel the QL17 is in a class all of its own, but that's a conversation for another time. The fast lens and the short focus throw make it ideal for street situations, and it's often one of my go-tos. The Olympus 35 RC comes with a 45mm f2.8 lens. It is the slowest lens of the bunch, but don't let that fool you into thinking that this lens will not give you sharp images. In fact, the biggest prints I have in my apartment, and the one behind this camera, are 24x36 prints, and they are detailed and produce sharper images than I would have thought possible with such a tiny camera. The highest f-stop is f22, while of course the lowest f-stop is f2.8. The fastest shutter speed is 500th of a second, while the slowest shutter speed is 1/15th of a second. The closest focusing distance is 3 feet, equivalent being 0.9 meters. So you do lose a bit as far as how close you can get to your subjects while utilizing this camera, and you lose a bit as far as shutter speed goes. I don't feel like there's much fall off in how sharp the images are while utilizing this camera. There is no finger nub or notch on the focusing ring, and because the camera is already so small, the distance between the focusing ring and the body is very, very, very little. So like I said earlier, it would help if your hands weren't so big, or if your fingers weren't so big, because this is a tiny camera. I call this camera the tiny giant for a reason, and it has everything to do with the lens. I'm always impressed with how sharp my images turn out while utilizing this camera, and I often recommend it to others who are just getting into rangefinders because of this factor. It's discreet, it's powerful, and it's cute. Look at it. All these cameras, of course, come with bulb mode, so you are able to utilize any of them in low light situations with a shutter release. All right, let's talk price. The cheapest of the group, of course, is the Yashica Electro 35 GSN. This is one of the biggest factors that I turn to when I'm recommending this camera. It's incredibly cheap. You can go to a thrift store, a yard sale, flea market, swap meet, and stumble across this camera and often find it for $10, $20, $30 at most while out and about. On average, you can find this camera on eBay from between $20 to $60. Just make sure that the battery is working when you purchase this camera. If the battery does not work, you cannot shoot this camera. If there is a problem with the battery housing, or someone says the light meter doesn't work, they're essentially telling you the camera's broken. Now you know. You don't want to end up with a classic paperweight when you didn't intend to in the first place. The Olympus 35 RC ranges from between $58 to $200 on eBay. For a working Olympus 35 RC with a working light meter, expect to spend about $150 to $175. That's about the sweet spot for this camera. The Canon Canonet QL17 G3 often hovers as low as $110 to about $290. Now, the higher end, $290 to even a little bit more, are the QL17s that are in perfect condition. They just look immaculate. So that's kind of what you're looking at for the QL17s. As with any purchase that you make on eBay, always make sure you're reading the description, inspecting the photos, and asking questions to the sellers to make sure that you are in fact getting a working camera.
Alright, that's it. The bout is done.
It's time to tally it up and find out who won the bout. Whew, that's it. Oh man. They all worked so hard. Each camera came through in peak condition to give it their all, you know. I was touched by the performances. In the end, if I have to choose a winner, if I have to recommend that one rangefinder of this lot that I would say absolutely go get for the full quality experience from top to bottom, the winner is the Canon Canonet QL17 G3. Honestly, it was a tough bout. All these cameras are quality. I have enjoyed using all these cameras, and I had a great time while doing the battle because these cameras are such a joy to use. You can't go wrong with any of them. There are no real losers here. If you have one of these awesome cameras, then congratulations, because you just need the other two now. All right, y'all, that is it. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button for me. If you enjoy the battles on this channel and you would like to see more in the future, comment down below and let me know which cameras you would like to see go head to head on the channel, because 2021 is kind of looking like 2020 and I've got time. So let me know your suggestions down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, because I would love to have you here in 2021 and beyond. All right, everybody, I will see you in the next one. Peace. Trying to be better this year, you know. I'm trying not to get upset with people just being loud for no reason on a Saturday morning when I'm trying to record. And now there's a plane. Man, all right, I'll just focus on these notes. I'm going to kill them. No, murder's wrong. All this noise. What is that? A spaceship? I think the quietest time in my neighborhood might be 4 in the morning, because at 4 in the morning, let me tell you, I don't hear anything. But I'm not going to film at 4 in the morning. I'm not going to do it.